Vertebral column is composed of 26 vertebrae ranging from cervical all the way to the coccyx. It's composed of 7 cervical, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar, 1 sacrum, and 1 coccyx. Now, in the cervical portion of the spine, you can actually see the curve of it, and the curve is going to be concave. This region of the spine is composed of 7 cervical vertebrae, and the way you name it is going to be designed based on the first letter of the word cervical. So cervical C1, cervical C2, cervical C3, all the way down to C7. Now, what's very unique in cervical 1 versus 2 and 7 are as such. Cervical 1 is also known as the atlas. The reason why it's called the atlas is because it bears the weight of the skull, and cervical 1 or the atlas does not have a body, whereas cervical number 2, C2, is also known as the axis, which has a body, but on the body itself it has what's called the odontoid process or the dance, as mentioned in the lab. Now, as mentioned in the lab, the C1 sits on C2, and which allows, so the dance on the C2 allows the C1 to pivot around this, which allows you to form what's called atlantoaxial joint, which allows you to shake your head and say no. So if I were to ask you in class, is Dr. Lee's class boring? The answer is always no, no, no. It's never boring, which means you pivot C1 around C2 to say no. Now, for C7 is very unique is because in C7, the spinous process of C7 is by far the longest among the cervical. So if you touch the base of your neck, at the base of the neck, there's a little bump that you can touch at the base of the neck, which means that little bump belongs to C7. And for that reason, because it's the longest one, it's known as vertebral prominence. And this was also mentioned in the lab as well. Thoracic. The thoracic segment of the spine is composed of 12 thoracic vertebrae, and it's named as thoracic 1 or T1 all the way down to T12. For the lumbar segment of the spinal cord, it is composed of 5 lumbar, which is initialized as L1, L2, L3, L4, and L5. For the sacral region of the spine, there's only one, and it's known as S for sacrum. Now, there's only one sacrum, but in actuality there were 5 sacral bones fused into one sacrum. And for that reason, you can actually see 5 holes in the sacrum. So the 5 foramina in the sacrum, you can see these are the 5 holes that you have in the sacrum. And the coccyx, there's one coccyx, so we can't write it as C because C stands for cervical, so we write as CO. So for coccyx, the coccyx there's only one coccyx, which is formed by the fusion of about anywhere between 3 to 5 coccygeal bones. So the bones fuse together and form what's called one coccyx, and that would be the coccyx that you see in this image right here, one coccyx. Now, when you compare between the different vertebrae, there are a few changes as you go from the top going down. Now let's examine the image on this image right here, the black and white image that we have. This image. As you go from the left to the right, the size changes, and which reflects the weight bearing capacity of that type of vertebra. For example, on the left side, we begin with the cervical vertebra. In the middle, we have what's called the thoracic vertebra. In the back, on the right side, we have what's known as the lumbar vertebra. As you can see, of the three, the body of the lumbar vertebra is by far the widest, by far the largest of the three, and the reason why is because it bears the most weight of the three. So the lumbar bears the weight of the thoracic, the cervical, and the skull. On the next one is this. The in between, the thoracic is not as wide as the lumbar, but a lot bigger than the cervical. Because why? And the reason why is because it bears more weight than the cervical, but less weight than the lumbar. The thoracic bears the weight of the cervical and the skull. On the left side, the cervical bears the least weight of the three, and all it bears is, and for that reason, it's not as wide as the thoracic. It bears only the weight of the skull. Now let's go back to how we name the cervical, C1 all the way to C7. Okay. Now what's very unique about C1 versus C7 is that C1 does not have a body, and once again it's called the atlas. C2 has a body, but it also has what's called the dance or odontoid process, the one I'm highlighting right now. And for that reason it's called the axis. So C1 atlas, C2 axis. Now for the spinous process. The spinous process is that projection that you see in the back of the vertebrae. So the spinous process of the cervical is very unique. It is called a bifid to bifid spinous process, which means it is split into two in the spinous process. So it's very unique in that sense. So the question I want to ask you now is this. Which vertebra bears the most weight? A, cervical, B, thoracic, C, lumbar. Good, the answer should be lumbar. Next question is this. Which vertebra bears the least weight? A, lumbar, B, thoracic, C, cervical. Very good. The answer should be cervical. Now the next question is, which vertebra bears the most weight? A, cervical, B, thoracic, C, lumbar, D, sacral, or E, coccyx. Very good. The answer should be sacrum bears more weight than any of the other vertebrae. Next question would be, which vertebra bears the least weight? A, coccyx, B, sacrum, C, lumbar, D, thoracic, and E, cervical. And the answer should be... I'm hoping you're thinking of the coccyx, right? And if you are, then the answer is correct. All right, very good. Now, the next thing is I want you to look at the image right here. Going on to the next image, I'm going to use a different color to highlight this. And this was going to be what's known as, oh, no, I don't want to use this color. I'm going to use a different color to make it very unique. Okay, let's use a different color. Let's use blue. Okay, good. So now, as you can see, um, the intervertebral discs are found in between the vertebrae. You can see the intervertebral disc